Right, another story involving political leaders. We saw there the US spying on their friends. Carl?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, and actually, if you also link it to the story about the drones in Pakistan, there's a massive thrust of stories emerging about the deteriorating power and prestige of the United States, and sort of all these revelations are contributing to that edifice coming down. And I think the way we can kind of characterize it is the United States is this very powerful empire, but it's not aware anymore of what its sense of purpose is. So you have all this kind of, it's an edifice that's rotting and starting to reveal why is it spying on its friends, and it actually would have spied on its friends traditionally, but nobody would have found out, or that would have never found itself into the public. Again, the same story in relationship to Pakistan, I guess. Why is the United States still pursuing aggressively this pattern of drone assassination, for lack of any other word? So it seems we have this massive problem of an empire that's quite strong militarily, but it seems to be not able to use its power rationally or to kind of influence the world in a much more rational way. And I think this is all part of a pattern. Now, nothing says that the US will lose its power immediately, but I think here we're really looking for an alternative world order, one that is not dominated by one single player who's kind of wreaking havoc.
Very briefly, before we move on, we're speaking about the US as this sort of state which exhibits lots of control. So now, you said about confidence in Syria. Do you think the US government are trying to sort of bolster themselves up as getting a result out of Syria?
No, I think that's the third place where actually, or the third story where the confusion of the United States is quite apparent, because it's involved itself very thoroughly from the beginning, and until now there doesn't seem to be a clear outcome that the United States wants out in Syria. So why is this persistent meddling then without having any sense of what it really wants? And again, it contributes to this sense that it's a very powerful state over there, the most powerful in the world, but one that is doing more damage than good on the world stage. And Syria has been one of the victims of those places, I would say.
Just before we move on, there was this paper that I picked up earlier. This says, the Bangla Songram, which says Bangladesh is captive, with the two leading ladies on the front cover. Zara, quick thoughts on that?
Well, you know, as we know, the Bangladesh politics has always been between Awami League and BNP. Awami League now are the governing body right now, and BNP, Khaleda Zia is the leader of the opposition party. Today was the day of revolt, as you said.
So I guess we're all looking as to how this will play out.
Will play out, yeah. I mean,
I do have to move on now, unfortunately, Zara. Now, last week, a video emerged about the treatment of African migrants to Israel. With more on this, here's Francis Legg.
Every year, thousands of African asylum seekers arrive in Israel. Most are fleeing poverty and persecution, but on arrival, many are faced with similar challenges. A new report documents a wave of racist attacks, imprisonment, and the forced deportation of African asylum seekers from Israel. The authors argue that this is not a marginal issue, but is provoked and legitimised by Israel's political leadership. The far-right Strong Israel Party routinely organises anti-African rallies. Miri Regev, a Likud party lawmaker, has described non-Jewish asylum seekers as a cancer in the body of the nation. A report by an Israeli academic has provided guidelines for removing all Africans from Israel, stating, "There's no room for another ethno-national group in Israel. They must be expelled." At this prison complex in the Negev desert, over 2,000 African asylum seekers are held without charge. Human rights organisations have reported cramped conditions and a worrying lack of medical care. Other detention facilities are in place across Israel, each holding hundreds, if not thousands, of men, women and children. In the Israeli capital, Tel Aviv, there has been a rise in violent physical attacks on African asylum seekers and black Israelis. Some say that these attacks have become so socially acceptable that they now can take place in busy urban areas in broad daylight. In Israel, politicians and sections of the media openly refer to the birth of non-Jewish babies, Palestinian or otherwise, in terms of a demographic threat. Many Palestinians cite anti-African racism in Israel as a symptom of an inherently racist state. But many Israeli politicians argue that some form of anti-immigration policy must be implemented in order to protect Israeli citizens and maintain a Jewish majority.
We have contacted the government of Israel for a response this morning, but have not heard from them yet. Now, joining us from Washington is Sunita Reynolds from Refugee International. Sunita, we've just seen a clip there produced by journalists visiting Israel just 2 months ago. You've written a report on asylum seekers in Israel. Can you tell me some more? Sunita, are you there?
Sure. So in August 2013, just a couple of months ago, I spent about 2 weeks meeting with asylum seekers, government officials, nonprofits that work with refugees and asylum seekers in Israel, and tried to understand better the entire process that asylum seekers go through. They're both what happens on arrival to the border, the detention conditions they find themselves in, and what happens when they arrive in South Palestine. Everyone arrives because when they listen again.
In your report, you say that Israel has failed to uphold conventions such as the UN Torture and Refugee Convention. Should they be sanctioned for this?
But technically, those conventions don't have sanctions side of them, and honestly, they're not the only violators of the conventions, unfortunately. But certainly, what they should be doing is acting consistent with them and welcoming and protecting refugees who arrive, rather than doing everything possible to keep them out.
Why is there this attitude towards migrants in Israel when they're quite active in terms of trafficking victims entering into the country? It's another thing your report touches upon.
Yes, and the reception of trafficking survivors was not good either at first. And I think that's important because it shows that when the Israeli government understood better who these people were, and that in fact they are people who had suffered terrible trauma, torture, persecution, the political will changed and they decided to protect them. Refugees and asylum seekers, immigrants all over the world are targeted by politicians. And often treated terribly. It's true in Israel as well. It's very easy political fodder. It's a very good distraction from real issues that are affecting people's lives in Israel. And there is obviously an underlying sentiment in some politicians and some of the public that they don't want this population here.
Thank you for your thoughts, Sunita. Thank you for joining us. Now, you've all been tweeting about a range of different topics throughout the week. Let's have a look at what you've all been tweeting about.
Trending on Twitter this week, over the weekend, a video showing anti-African sentiment was released and went viral, with @Okpal presenting the Israelis who have vowed to keep going to jail until African prisoners are released. Also on Twitter, Syria continued to stay up in conversation. The United Nations Chemical Weapons Team also announced that by next week, Syria would have destroyed all of its chemical weapon production. Muslim students came to attention once again, but this time for challenging homelessness. Finally, Twitter was set alight after Britain debated the niqab.
Right, we saw a few different things there. The first thing I want to come to you, sister, is the niqab debate. You were there last night at the Channel 4 debate. What were your thoughts?
Yes, I was. Interesting to say the least. As part of the audience, it was surprising to know that we didn't actually get a chance for everyone to air their views, but both sides were heard. There were very justified points on the part of women who were wearing niqab, on the side of ladies such as Fatima Barakatullah, and on the contrary, it was quite distressing to hear what the if you like, the far right wing activists who were present had to air their views about.
Now, Channel 4 conducted a poll, right, and they say 56% of Brits think the niqab should be banned. Sarah, what do you think about that? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, to say the least. Do you think it makes a difference in as to who is conducting the poll or which particular groupings they're sort of aiming that at?
Definitely. That was part of the question raised yesterday. Who were answering the poll, and what do women who wear niqab on a day-to-day basis, if they interact with the larger population, which they do, what are their views on women wearing niqab? I mean, I could speak for myself, and I do know I interact with people who don't wear niqab, who are not Muslims, on a daily basis, and I do ask them, what are your perspectives? And most people respond that they do not care what the apparel a person chooses to wear is.
What do you think of the media portrayal of women wearing a niqab? Now, we have seen it come to attention, on various fronts, whether it be on newspaper fronts or on TV debates. What do you think the media portrayal is like?
Unfortunately, media portrayal does show women wearing niqab to be oppressed. It's male male imposing themselves on women, yes, unveiled.
I have that from a couple of weeks ago.
Hidden from society. But there are women who, we need to really consider, who are we addressing here? Women who are educated, empowered, who are making their own decisions to wear the niqab for whatever reason. It doesn't have to be defended or attacked. It's a personal choice. If we are, to prioritize contents of a woman's wardrobe as the most important national debate, then that's cause for concern. But wearing the niqab, yes, can be a cause for debate, but not concern.
Right. Well, yes. Thank you very much for joining us, both of you. Unfortunately, that is all we've got time for this evening. I want to thank all of my guests, Carl Sharrow, Zara Kadir, Sunita Reynolds and Jamina Qureshi for joining us, and of course you at home for watching. Remember to keep up with the Twitter conversation using #TheReport. We will be following stories throughout the week, so do keep tweeting. If you prefer, you can also email us your thoughts on the report at islamchannel.tv. But for now, we'll leave you with some scenes from East London, where a charity made in Europe came out to remember the victims of the Rana Plaza factory collapse, where just 6 months ago, thousands lost their lives. Do tune in next week to join us for your report. Assalamu alaikum.